What's going on, guys? So today we're going to talk about wants versus needs. And that reminds me of this beautiful song by the Rolling Stones. You can't always get what you want, but if you try sometime, you'll find you get what you need. Y'all know that song now. Okay, cool. Wants versus needs is muy importante because a lot of times we want something. We want the filet mignon, we want the ribeye, we want the ribs, we want the fresh caught fish out of the ocean, and we want to eat that. Whereas in life, sometimes you just need rice and beans because we can't afford the steak, the filet mignon. We can't afford the shrimp on the Barbie. So this is where I think you have to have a hard conversation sometimes with yourself. And you have to say, what do I need versus what do I want? I'm the first person to say that not everybody is at the same points in their lives, both financially, mentally, spiritually, all these things. I know people are at different levels in their lives when it comes to what they want versus what they need. And I know some people need more things than other people. So not saying that every single person needs the exact same stuff, but I wanted to quickly break down what is a want versus what is a need first, because I think we need to get on the same definition. A need is something essential for health, safety, or basic functioning. Examples include food, water, shelter, sleep, safety, and meaningful social connection. A want is something you would like to have because it adds comfort, pleasure, convenience, or status, but you can generally function without it. Examples include a newer phone, designer clothes, restaurant meals, or luxury vacation. So now we have the definition of what a want versus a need is, because I think that's super important. Now, I have been doing some research on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And the reason why I do that is because it gives me a good framework to work off of on what an actual need is. And we talked about what a need is just a minute ago. We said it is something essential for health, safety, or basic functioning. And so when you keep that in mind, it's like, what do I need to stay alive? What do I need for my safety? And then staying alive is safety, kind of. And then what do I need for basic functioning? And so we're going to get into a few different things when it comes to what we think that is. But Maslow's hierarchy of needs, they're broken up into kind of two sections, and there's 5 commonly taught levels. The first level has 3 things in it, and it's the basic of the basic needs in the hierarchy. The first one is your physiological needs. That's food, water, sleep, warmth, and other requirements for survival. Number 2 is safety needs: physical security, health, stability, employment, resources, and predictability. That's safety. That's like feeling safe in your environment. And then the third one is love and belonging: friendship, family, intimacy, community, and acceptance. So when I think about like the baseline level of living, I think about these 3 things in the first level. I need food, water, and air. I need to feel secure that I am safe and that I have like a stable enough job that I feel like I'm going to be able to keep getting food, water, and be able to breathe good air. And then love and belonging, that's definitely tougher, but hopefully my parents and my brothers and sisters love me and I have a sense of belonging with my parents and my brothers and sisters. Now I'm married and I have a wife and I want her to love me. I want to feel a sense of love and belonging with her. Most people have a mom and a dad, or they've had a mom and a dad. Not everybody has brothers and sisters, so I know friendship is really important for some people. So I'm not going to get into that too heavily, but the things that become wants are esteem. This is the second portion of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Esteem, which is confidence, achievement, competence, and recognition and respect. All right. And then self-actualization, which is developing your abilities, pursuing meaningful work, expressing creativity, and becoming what you are capable of becoming. So I love to focus on the first 3 things in that first bucket, because those things are what we really, really need to begin with to create a solid base. And then we can focus on building that confidence and achievement and competence and recognition because we feel safe and we feel like we're getting enough food and we feel like we're in a good tight-knit group or family or something like that. Now, one thing Maslow has said about this stuff is that it doesn't all come at once, and it doesn't mean that it all has to be fully actualized with each one of them for you to go on to the next one. So I want to start off by telling you a story of how I attacked these different levels and how I felt safe enough to try and build off of those baseline levels. So the first thing I'll say is in October of 2020, I moved into a 1-bedroom apartment with my younger brother and his dog. Well, I guess not his dog yet. It was just me and my younger brother to begin with. And we were both paying about $1,000, I think $1,200 in rent to live there. And we were capable of doing that because at the time I was still working at Body Spec and Jordan was just now working at Chadwick School to make money. So we were just making enough money that we had to live together in order to pay rent, which is a survival need. You have to being safe in a room or something that's going to cover you and let you sleep. And then I used the rest of my money just to buy food essentially. I think that is the most important thing I'll say to begin with is living below your means is super important, and making enough money in order to support yourself is also very important. So the first thing we decided to do was we wanted to live the most frugal life we possibly could so that he could be a head coach at a private school and I could pursue my dream of running fly bodies. And I will go ahead and say that is almost jumping straight to developing your abilities, pursuing meaning, and expressing creativity, because that's almost jumping to number 5. But I had already had our shelter taken care of, paying for food because I was making money that way, and then also love and belonging. Like we're brothers, so we felt like we belonged. So I kind of had the first 3 taken care of. Now, I'm telling you this story because I wanted to live in a 1-bedroom apartment by myself in, a nice part of Manhattan Beach, but we were living in a 1-bedroom apartment in Torrance in probably not the greatest part of town, because I remember at one point the police came to our place and had their guns drawn and actually broke into a place because they got a call that something bad was happening. To be in a better spot than living in a 1-bedroom apartment with my brother at the time, 32 years old. And I had just finished being a active duty person in the Air Force. So I was making really good money there. And then also working for another startup company that was actually doing really well and growing. So to say that I wanted to be where I was would be not the most truthful thing I could say, because I wanted bigger aspirations and I wanted more, but I know I needed just a roof over my head, someone that I knew that could support me, which was my younger brother at the time, to live with, and then also the ability to pay for food and pay for my rent. So I think it is to the utmost importance to figure out a way to make it work for yourself and your lifestyle and what you want to do. Because sometimes what you want and what you need don't align very well at the current moment, but you can build yourself up to getting what you want. Just because you don't get what you want to begin with doesn't mean you're going to never get what you want. It just means you need to provide your needs before you go for your wants sometimes, because if you don't, then you're going to maybe end up on the streets. And if I would have tried to live a more lavish lifestyle and just spent all my money, who knows, maybe I'll be homeless. But I decided to only pay for the things that I really needed and I could afford before going for something that I really, really wanted. Okay, so then I will say after about, a year and a half of, it was more like 3 years of living with my brother, I had built Fly Bodies up enough and I was making enough money that I felt comfortable to start dating. And so that's where it's more of okay, I want to start going outside of myself, and I would like to try to find some type of girlfriend or wife and build a family, because I feel like I have built myself on a base that is strong enough for me to go out further. And I'm not going to go down that road too much, but then when I got married and my wife and I are taking care of each other, I also feel compelled to build my company that I'm building. And so I think a lot of times you don't have to feel like I can only take care of myself for the longest time being until I'm 100% eating the best food, I'm staying in the best place, and I have the best friends, and my family is the best in the world. Maslow didn't think that you only had to do one at a time. You could do multiple things at a time, but once one of those things, especially in the basic needs, is taken away, then your life kind of gets turned upside down and you feel like you have to focus on those heavily in order to get them stable. So I know I'm rambling on a little bit, but this one's going to be an interesting podcast because I really wanted to talk about wants versus needs, because we are in a time where a lot of people feel like they need things when we really just want more things in our lives, and we don't need more things in our life in order to survive. And I'm going to talk about a few things. What does our body need? Our body needs oxygen provided for us outside. Our body needs movement. Our body needs to be able to move. I know some people can't move because they're in wheelchairs or like they're vegetables and stuff like that. I know that's the case, but our body needs to move because we want to build muscle. We want our heart rate to go up and stuff like that. Our body needs sleep. We need to get 7 to 9 hours of sleep every night so that we feel better the next day. I know some people need less sleep because they have a gene in their body that doesn't require them to get as much sleep, but the majority of people need 7 to 9 hours of sleep on a consistent basis. We need water. We don't need things other than water a lot of the times, right? We can get electrolytes from food, or we can put electrolytes in our water occasionally if we need to, but we don't need all these crazy different drinks all the time. And then the last thing you need is food. For your body. Your body needs certain nutrients on a consistent basis in order for it to perform its best. This is probably one of my most rambling podcasts I've ever made, because I just truly believe like the whole fact that we overspend on things outside of what we actually need is very frustrating to me. And I try my best to live within my means. That's why I'm harping on this so much, is because some people feel like they need to have Uber Eats. They need to go out and watch movies at the theater. They need to go on vacations and all these other things. You don't need that stuff. These are extra things. Now, you can go to the grocery store and you can get groceries and you can cook them for you, and get really, really cheap groceries. That's fine too. But I want everyone to understand that you are capable of making things happen more than you think, as opposed to saying, I don't have that certain thing and I want it. If I can't have that, then nothing is good enough. I want to just move down the line here. Who was Abraham Maslow? Abraham Maslow was born in 1908 and died in 1970. He was an American psychologist and one of the founders of humanistic psychology. He believed psychology focused too heavily on mental illness, weakness, and abnormal behavior. Instead, Maslow wanted to understand what helps healthy people grow, find meaning, and reach their potential. Maslow and I are directly aligned in that feeling, because I want to know what helps people grow, helps healthy people grow, find meaning, and then also reach their potential. I think that's so cool. And I think that obviously in certain time periods, you have to focus on mental illness, weakness, and abnormal behavior, because you need to understand those so other people aren't getting those. But I think sometimes we're in a thriving economy or a thriving way of life, and we want to know how we can grow, find meaning, and reach our potential. How did he develop his theory of needs? Maslow developed what is commonly called the hierarchy of needs by studying human motivation and examining people he considered psychologically healthy, productive, and fulfilled. Rather than primarily studying people with serious psychological problems, he examined the lives and characteristics of accomplished individuals, including people such as Albert Einstein, Abraham Lincoln, and Eleanor Roosevelt. He also drew insights from professors, colleagues, students, and clinical observations, biographies, and historical records. Maslow noticed that human motivations seem to follow a general pattern. When people are struggling to obtain food, shelter, and physical safety, those needs tend to dominate their attention. Once basic needs are reasonably secure, concerns such as relationships, confidence, achievement, meaning, and personal growth become more prominent. And I think that's so important, because once you have those baseline levels met, then you can start thinking about confidence, achievement, meaning, and personal growth. Because if you don't have those baseline levels met, you're going to feel scared. You're not going to feel protected. You're not going to feel like you're getting enough food to live. And so you're always going to feel like you're always just surviving. Was Maslow's hierarchy of needs scientifically proven? Maslow's theory was influential, but it was not developed through a large representative scientific experiment. His sample was selectively and heavily influenced by Western culture, his personal judgment, and who qualified as self-actualized. Research generally supports the idea that food, safety, relationships, respect, meaning, and growth are important human needs. However, studies do not consistently support to claim that everyone pursues them in exactly the same order. And there are some criticisms of Maslow, and I want to go over those a little bit. Some key criticisms were a lack of empirical evidence, like we just talked about, rigidity of needs hierarchy. The model inaccurately assumes that lower level needs addressed. In reality, multiple needs can be pursued simultaneously, and an order can vary by individual. Neglect of social context. It falls to full account for how environmental factors and social situations shape human motivation. So there are definitely some, holes you can poke in Maslow's hierarchy of needs. But when you just think about it just from a basic concept, it makes sense. When you take care of your basic needs, it allows you to look outside of yourself and say, what else can I do for this world? I honestly just wanted to use this podcast as a way to say, we need to start thinking like at a baseline level. The summertime is a great place to really take a step back and say, like, what do I actually need versus what am I actually doing that I want? Because when you strip away all the things that you actually want and just get down to what you actually need, it makes life a little simpler sometimes. And then you can actually start building back up from the things you actually need and saying, you know what, I don't actually want to do that anymore because that is a want. I don't actually need that. Hopefully that's helpful. I know that was a long talk for basically a simple topic, but I always get super passionate about this stuff because I think my younger self would find it helpful for someone to explain like the needs versus the wants. And obviously culture in your environment and the people that you're looking at on Facebook and Instagram, all these other things kind of drive sometimes what you want. But at the end of the day, we choose what we want. Our body is choosing what we need. So just remember that. That's all I got, guys. Get after it.